Good morning everyone. I figured we can do a little chatty get ready with me and at the very end of the video try two of my new Eldridge lipsticks, namely the shades Strawberry Shock and Meet Me in Berlin. And hopefully you don't mind that this video is going to turn out a little bit long, and I also want to give you a heads up. We're going to be talking finally about Stranger Things, taking Glow Lost by Auric in the meantime. So there will be heavy spoilers. If you have not seen the show, you would like to see the show, and you don't want the show to be spoiled for you, then please do not watch this video because there will be heavy spoilers. Not in the portion where we're going to talk about the lipsticks, because then I'm just going to focus on the lipsticks, but the rest of the Get Ready With Me will pretty much be a huge spoiler for Stranger Things, and specifically Stranger Things Season 4, which is the latest season to have been released. So now is your time to click away if you don't want it to be spoiled for you. But for the rest, let's chat, because lordy lord, did I absolutely love Season 4. Before we move into Season 4 though, I wanted to shout out one of you, lovely angel, who recommended this concealer to me. This is the NYX Bear With Me Concealer Serum. And I was complaining how dry my under eyes are, and you recommended this concealer, and oh my gosh, is it lovely. I love the texture of this. It is so... serum doesn't imply that it's going to be like a thin texture though. It's quite creamy and quite thick. Let me just put out a little bit here for you to see. See, it's quite thick. It holds its own, so it's not really like a serum consistency, but at the same time it is so flipping hydrating. This is the shade Vanilla, and I think it's a really good match for me. It's just slightly lighter than my under eyes, and it looks so nice because it does not make my eyes look crappy at all. I really like this. I haven't actually worn it on its own so far. I've only been mixing it with the Lancome Tainted All, and I feel like the Tainted All really like takes over in terms of both color and texture. So today I'd like to give that NYX concealer the possibility to shine. But oh my god, do you see how nice that is? And it does not make my eyes dry at all. Going back to Season 4 of Stranger Things. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I adored Season 1. The year that Season 1 came out was a beautiful year for TV series, because it was the same year that Dark was released as well, and Dark is probably my favorite TV show ever. I love Dark just a little bit more than I love Stranger Things, taking my Dior backstage, but I adored the first season of Stranger Things because it had so many like amazing elements to it. It was so well done, like the 80s nostalgia with like the setup of this like creepy world, with the adventure of the children, you know, with the friendship between them, the mystery, the redemption arc of Steve's character, who stereotypically you would have expected to just to be like the asshole in the show, and then he takes such a like U-turn halfway through the season. It was just so well done. I loved Season 1. Then when Season 2 was released, I actually still really enjoyed it. If I'm being honest, I really liked Season 2. I know from some people that they didn't. I still thought it was a great season with its moments. And Season 3 was just like the odd one in the bunch. You either loved it or you didn't. And for me, that season didn't really work. I think I might go back and rewatch it. Just because I think some things for Season 4 should be put into context by watching Season 3. For me, it was really like I was a little bit bored, I wasn't really scared, whereas in Season 1, like the upside down, the Demogorgon, like this whole like world, I honestly did find it scary. So when Season 4 was released, I didn't really have much hopes about it. I was like, oh, you know, I'll watch it because I want to be consistent. I just wanted to give them a chance. And then my fucking mind was blown. I loved this season so much. They like took Season 1 and then cranked it up 10 notches, and I loved so many things about Season 4. Some of the performances were absolutely fantastic. Sadie Sink delivered a award-winning performance this season. It was so good, and I think that it's so nice that in this season they kind of went back to explaining the world that they have created a little bit, because ever since the show started, we've all been wondering what the fuck is the Upside Down, where does it come from, who is in charge, is it the Mind Flayer that they've been alluding to all of these seasons so far, taking my Charlotte Tilbury powder, or is it something else? And when this season started, they introduced this new villain, again based on, if you haven't seen the show, all the villains and like the whole mythology around it is basically based on Dungeons and Dragons, and It's not directly inspired from Dungeons and Dragons, but it's the metaphor that the kids on the show are using to explain what's happening around them. So some of the metaphors I think are closer to reality than others. For example, I've been on Reddit, of course, and I've read from some of the Dungeons and Dragons nerds that, for example, the Demogorgon wasn't really a very true representation of what the Demogorgon on Dungeons and Dragons really is. So they have used Dungeons and Dragons so far pretty loosely. However, this season they introduced a new villain, Vecna, who apparently, as I'm made to understand by the nerds on the internet, is actually a really like spot on representation of Vecna in the actual Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to be taking my Charlotte Tilbury bronzer now in the shade 2 medium. And it's probably one of the best villains that I have seen on TV recently. Is it the best villain I've ever seen? I don't think so. As of late, I can tell you, Homelander from The Boys is probably the absolute best villain I've seen on a TV show lately. But Vecna is a completely different type of villain compared to Homelander, and I love Vecna. And the reveal, man, all of these rambling must be like super fucking random for all of you who have not seen the show at all. I apologize so deeply, but I would just really like to like ramble about it, and it's like totally random rambles also. There's like no rhyme or reason here, just things pop into my head. As the friendly orderly was getting friendly with 11, Millie Bobby Brown's character, and at one point he said something in the lines of, you know, in experiments, O1 doesn't really exist, or he said something of the sorts, and I was like, I'm onto you. I think you're number one. You're going to turn out to be number one. But the jump they made from him being O1 to being Henry Creel to being Vecna, I would have never put that together. It was an amazing plot twist and an amazing reveal in the Volume 1 finale. Now, a couple of things that happened that people have different opinions on. The Duffer brothers have said that they find it very difficult to kill off major, like main cast from the show, which you can see by the fact that they usually introduce a new character in each season, like a very likable character, and then they kill that character off. So there is a little bit of like an emotional component to it, but without it being like too heavy. And I kind of understand where they're coming from. They've said that, you know, it would be extremely depressing, and where do you take the show from there, you know, if one of the main cast characters dies. Now I'm going to be going into the Natasha Denona Light palette, Face Glam palette in the shade Light, and I'm going to take the blush and the highlighter from that. And in this season, they introduced this new character, Eddie Munson, who was just so much fun, and I was really rooting for him not to die, but unfortunately he did. I feel like I could see where they're going with his death, you know, oh, I always run away, and this time I didn't run away, but it was like, there were so many other ways to resolve his situation without him having to die, so it was like, you could see that it was purposefully done to create like an emotional turmoil at the end of the season. I don't find that his death was like absolutely necessary for the story to move along. I think it was just necessary to create, you know, the emotional element. Obviously, I think everyone loved season 4. Obviously, I think everyone loved, episode 4, the episode Dear Billy, when Max is at the graveyard talking to her brother and she first gets possessed by Vecna. That was a really, really powerful episode and a really powerful performance by Sadie. For a second there, I really was like, oh my god, maybe she's not going to make it. Maybe they're finally going to kill off, you know, a major character. I was like at the edge of my seat the whole time. And then that epic scene with like Kate Bush's song Running Up the Hill, which is like everywhere now, because for those of you who have not seen Stranger Things, you're probably like, what the fuck is an 80s song doing all over, like topping the charts of every country in the world? You can thank Stranger Things for that. Same thing for Master of Puppets by Metallica, by the way. Epic scene with Eddie on that trailer, like rocking it away to Master of Puppets. Loved that scene. They also really threw me on for a loop there when they started alluding that Eleven had killed all of these kids, you know, in the facility, in the lab facility where they were kept, because, you know, the way they build up the story, and after she smacked that girl with like the rollerblade, it was like, yeah, I can see Eleven, you know, losing it and like killing off a bunch of people. So when the final reveal happened, I was like, wow, they let us on really well with that one. One thing I want to say, to me, the whole storyline and like plot line in Russia with Winona Ryder and that journalist guy who went to save Hopper, To me, that could have been condensed to be much less screen time, because I'll be honest with you, I was basically like fast forwarding through those scenes because I was just finding myself a little bit bored by that storyline. I like the element of what they do really well because they have this like huge ensemble cast. I spritz my brush with Fix Plus, by the way. They have like this huge ensemble cast, and obviously you can't really throw them all on an adventure together, so I understand why they so masterfully like split them into groups and have them all have their own adventure. I really kind of enjoyed the adventure of the boys, you know, going to save 11. It was not as, like, to me the most fun was what was going on in Hawkins, and you know, the relationships and the dynamics between the people there, you know, with Nancy and Steve kind of rekindling the romance, and with Nancy and Robin, you know, the girl bonding, and that really awesome episode where they went to the asylum to talk to Victor Creel. That was an awesome episode and an awesome bonding moment between the two. Okay, let's get started on the eyes now. I'm just going to quickly tell you what I'm going to do with this palette. So I'm going to take this shade through my crease, and then I'm going to mix these two on my lid. So I was like, okay, I can see, you know, that someone needs to go and get Hopper out of that Russian prison, but at the same time I was like, oh, can we just make this whole like plot line a little bit shorter, more to the point, and like just get it over with? Because I was feeling a little bit bored because I was just so intrigued by everything that was happening in Hawkins. I think Jamie Campbell Bower did such an amazing job delivering his monologue at the end of the season when he reveals to Nancy his whole like backstory. The real fun was episode 9, the last episode of the show, which was like a fucking roller coaster of emotions, because I was at the edge of my seat pretty much the whole time. When Max flew into the air and her bones started snapping, I was in tears, okay? I was in tears. That's another little moment that I don't know how I feel about, because like 3 minutes later they brought her back and now she's sort of dead, but not really, because what they're obviously alluding to with 11 going into her mind and not finding her there is that her body is there, but her mind is not. From what we have been getting as, you know, little crumbs about Vecna or Henry, it's that he doesn't kill his victims, but he consumes them, he possesses them. Max is probably stuck somewhere in the upside down in Vecna's world, Vecna's mind. And what I'm really looking forward to in the next season is, because they kept her alive, so that must be for a reason. So I'm hoping that her being kept alive is actually a device to move the plot, and not just a way to like get out of killing off a major character. A couple of things that I look forward in season 5. So first of all, apparently they have basically been telling us about the existence of Vecna since season 1, because in season 4, of course, they introduced the character of Vecna, the grandfather clock, and the little chimes. And if you go on like any social platform like YouTube or Reddit, you will find videos of people who have gone all the way back to season 1, and you can hear those chimes already back in season 1. So I'm curious what that grandfather clock and how time are going to play into that, because they've been also, you know, making references to, you know, controlling time. So I'm curious how time is going to play along. I'm going to take my NYX glitter glue. Something else that I found very interesting about the grandfather clock. Some dude on Reddit said that he was an expert on D&D, and because they have been quite truthful in their depiction of Vecna, he said that in Dungeons & Dragons a character like Vecna needs a something like a token to keep him connected to the real world, and people assume that it's probably going to be that grandfather clock, and that grandfather clock is going to play somehow a role in his defeat. It's a little bit similar to Harry Potter and Voldemort and, you know, the Horcruxes. But, you know, who knows, maybe J.K. Rowling was inspired by Dungeons & Dragons when she was creating Voldemort. Something else about time that I wanted to say. I hope that we get an explanation of why the Upside Down is stuck in time on the day that Will disappeared, which brings us back to how is Will going to be important to this story. I feel like Will has been kind of in the backseat, especially in this season. He hasn't really done much, he hasn't really had much to do with the storyline, and given his connection with the Mind Flayer and the Upside Down, I expect that he will have a more major and more significant contribution to the storyline in season 5, so I'm very excited to see how that story gets resolved. I'm very much looking forward to finding out what exactly the Upside Down is. When the whole reveal of Vecna's character happened and she sent him into the Upside Down and then he was explaining what the Upside Down is, to me it almost felt like, it's probably too abstract and too philosophical and it's not going to be the case, but to me it almost felt like the Upside Down is like a reflection of his ugly inner world. Anyway, I'm taking the Bridgerton 2 palette now for a little bit of a pairing between Pat and Natasha. Pat and Natasha have been flirting a lot on my eyes recently. I'm going to take this beautiful mint shade, which I think fits perfectly with the makeup and the dress, and I'm going to pop that into my inner corners. Also, the Upside Down really only exists in Hawkins. It hasn't really spread to the rest of the world, although now that the borders between the two worlds have basically been broken, the two worlds are kind of going to start merging, because, you know, that's the ultimate goal for Henry, you know, to take over the world and rid humans of their, you know, boring, worthless lives. Oh, I really like how this look is turning out. That mint shade with those neutrals. On my lower lash line, I'm just going to go back into this shade that I applied in my crease and run it on my lower lashes, just going to keep it quite nice and simple here so that we can move on to the lipstick. I'm going to stop rambling now about Stranger Things. If I think of other, you know, little topics that I would like to talk about, because I will probably rewatch the whole season and try to like notice like little things here and there. Oh, there was one really cool moment when they were playing Dungeons and Dragons and then they were trying to defeat Vecna, and then they threw an 11 and an 11 wasn't enough, which I thought was a really cool like foreshadowing of what's going to happen, that 11 isn't going to be enough to beat Vecna. They needed a 20, so people on the internet now have been trying to put all sorts of like odd combinations together of who 20 really represents. I personally don't know, and I would like to be surprised. We have to wait for season 5 now. So sad. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. Those are all of my ramblings on Stranger Things, the Upside Down, and you know, I'm very curious what you guys think about it. Let me know all of your thoughts. What did you enjoy about it? Did you notice little things here and there that I might have missed? Let's chat about Stranger Things if you're in the mood for it and you've actually seen the show, of course. If you haven't seen the show, then this whole rambling was like... Alright, I am back. Eyes and face are done and we can proceed to trying on the lipsticks. I purchased 2 of Lisa Eldridge's newly released lipsticks and I ordered them in 2 different formulas. She has expanded quite a bit now on her luxuriously loosened formula, of which I have previously purchased 2 colors. I have the shades Atomic Cherry and Spirited Away, which I have used a lot on my channel. And now I purchased the shade Meet Me in Berlin because I am a sucker for a good brown nude. So this is the shade Meet Me in Berlin, which we're going to try in a little bit. And the second lipstick that I ordered is the shade Strawberry Shock, which is one of her insanely saturated lip colors. So this is this shade over here, which we're going to try on in a little bit as well. Those of you who follow me on Instagram probably already know that I tried Strawberry Shock yesterday as soon as it arrived, and I can tell you it is absolutely delightful. And because it is the color that I want to wear today for the rest of the day, we are going to start with Meet Me in Berlin. Like I said, Meet Me in Berlin is her chocolate brown nude shade. It came with the most fun backstory ever, so if you haven't watched Lisa's reveal video, I recommend you go and watch it because she told the coolest story when it comes to this lipstick shade and its name. And I ordered it a little bit afraid that it might be too similar to something like Flash 3 from Pat McGrath Labs. Let me grab my Divinyl from Pat McGrath in the shade Flash 3, because I think that was the shade that I was the most worried it would look a lot like, because they're also in very like similar formulas. So the luxuriously loosened formula, I swear I check every time before I do a video how I need to pronounce that name, and I forget every single time. It just does not, it doesn't stick, bounces off, right off. Anyway, the luxuriously loosened formula is her sheer cream formula. So it's a formula that you can apply a little bit like a light sheer stain, or you can build up to be quite like an opaque cream lipstick. Not like a super opaque cream lipstick, but to be more opaque than just a stain. So let's hold up the 2 shades next to each other and see how similar they are. So I think that luckily the brown nude from Lisa Eldridge, the shade Meet Me in Berlin, is actually more of a true brown nude, whereas Flash 3 has more strong red tones to it. So I think I didn't really dupe myself. But now, without further ado, let's apply the shade Meet Me in Berlin. I'm going to zoom you in a tiny bit. So here you have a very light wash of Meet Me in Berlin, because as I said, these are quite buildable. So you can see it's like a very, very nude brown, not too warm, not too cool, just absolute perfection. Now let's build it up a little bit. A little bit of throwback to the 90s. I don't think I have anything quite like this in quite this formula. To be honest with you, brown nudes are not something that companies do really well. A lot of the times brown nudes have too much pink in them, or they're too cool toned, and this is just the most perfectly balanced, like neutral brown nude that I have in this gorgeous, amazing, really comfortable formula. So I am really happy with my purchase. What do you think? Now, before I apply Strawberry Shock, I am going to prep my lips a little bit, because this is going to be the lipstick that I'll wear for the rest of the day. So I am going to apply a little bit of my Prep and Prime from MAC, which I always do. It's a lip primer which smoothens out your lips, increases the longevity of your lipstick, and allows for the lipsticks to stay within your lip lines, especially if you're someone who struggles with that. I'm going to also line my lips. And now let's go in with Strawberry Shock. Insanely saturated, and she really means saturated. This is a gorgeous color. So I found the way Lisa Eldridge described this lipstick quite interesting. When she was announcing the colors, she described this as like a filtered red, and I found that quite an interesting description, and I put it on my lips and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of understand what she means now, because this is red, but it's not extremely it's not like an extremely vibrant and punchy red, but there is a little bit of exactly like that mutedness to the color. So it's a red, but it's not a very scary red. At the same time, it is an extremely saturated and pigmented lipstick, so obviously it's going to come with a lot of punch. You can see it's not a classic red, so it's not a blue-based red. It's also not an orange red. It has a little bit of like a watermelony, like strawberry, daiquiri kind of like feel to it, like that vibe. So it doesn't really reside in any like specific color tone of the shade red. It's just so nice, so unique. I really love this color. I wore it yesterday through an extremely greasy dinner, and it did wear off in the lower part of my lips here in the center, obviously where it came into contact with all that oil that was going on in my food. But for the rest, it remained pretty intact. So it is also a very long-lasting lipstick, and it is very comfortable. Here is the lipstick, by the way, a bit more from afar, so you can like enjoy it in its full glory. I think it's just so like it livens up your face. It has that like tone that livens up your complexion. Okay, the first one I want to compare to is the shade Fever Dream. And Fever Dream is more of a sienna red, so I didn't really think it's going to be super similar to this. This looked a bit more like vibrant in terms of color, but still I would like to hold them up for you and swatch them. Lisa Eldridge versus Fever Dream from Pat McGrath. You can see the one from Pat McGrath is somewhat deeper, more muted, and indeed has those more sienna tones to it. So let's do the swatches here, shall we? So here you have the shade Strawberry Shock from Lisa Eldridge, and now let's do Fever Dream next to that. Fever Dream is also a gorgeous red color, but it's so much more muted and a little bit darker, so it's absolutely not the same lipstick. The next shade that I was really afraid of, especially because some people described Strawberry Shock as like a orangey warm toned red, was the shade Obsessed, which is one of my favorite lipsticks for the summer. And I think this one indeed looks like closer. You can see that there is a bit more similarity between these two shades, but at the same time, the shade from Pat McGrath is so much more like orange and so much more fiery. You can see clearly the difference between the two is in the undertones. This leans much more like an orange red, whereas this is much more like a strawberry watermelon type of red. And now when it comes to strawberry watermelon type of red, I did actually remember that I have a lipstick from Urban Decay which is in a very similar shade, and I think this one might be a pretty close dupe for the shade from Lisa Eldridge, but maybe more pink. Let's see. So here you have Lisa Eldridge Strawberry Shock versus Tryst, which is one of the cream vice lipsticks from Urban Decay. I think in terms of tones, those are probably the closest to each other, but now that I'm looking at Tryst, I feel like Tryst might be actually more pink. But let's give it a nice little swatch. Actually, I'm going to swatch it right here next to Strawberry Shock. Oh, indeed, this has much more cool-toned pink tones to it compared to Strawberry Shock. That makes me really happy because it means that I truly do not have a dupe for Strawberry Shock in my own collection. So this is a very unique red, and as someone who loves red lipstick, I always enjoy getting a red that I didn't have before. So overall, I'm pretty happy with my purchase of these new lipsticks from Lisa Eldridge. I love the luxuriously lucent formula and especially like more nudie tones within that range. So I'm very happy to have a true classic brown nude. And the shade Strawberry Shock, I think the visuals speak louder than my words, because just look at it. Alright, I'm going to close off this video now because it's probably going to be a long one. I hope that you enjoyed the Chatty Get Ready With Me, the eye look, the Stranger Things ramblings, even though for some of you they might have been completely like, what the fuck was going on there? But let me know what you thought about the lipsticks, which one was your favorite. I'm sure that a bunch of you did quite significant damage on the Lisa Eldridge website last week, so do let me know what you purchased and what your favorite color so far is. As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!